Hey, deserving listeners, the Ultimatum. Let's watch.
Today's a day.
It was a long day, for sure. If I had to be honest, I think we're the strongest couple at this point in the experience, by far.
All right, he is saying that he believes that they are the strongest couple by far compared to the other couples. I don't think anyone watching the show would agree with that, but we're not there behind the scenes. Maybe there's evidence of that. But it is interesting that he would phrase it that way. It would be perhaps more reasonable if he thought, I think we're a strong couple. I think we're going to make it. Or he had optimism about the two of them. But it's interesting that he phrases it that way. We are superior to the other couples. Now, I don't know about Colby, but there are people that I've treated and worked with and assessed over many months who exhibit defenses of grandiosity and seeing the world from their own perspective. And for these individuals, they have a vast sea of inferiority that they're defending against constantly, depending on the degree of the inferiority that they've incurred from their experiences in the past. And one of the ways to defend yourself against inferiority like that is to be in a constant state of asserting your superiority. And one of the ways that you might do that is to see your love and your relationship as superior to other people. So I don't know if that's what we're seeing, or it could be wishful thinking. You know, if we don't go down the grandiose road, if we just went down the road of like, he really is desperate for his relationship with Madeline to work out and he's worried that it won't. So he's trying to, he's expressing, he's deluding himself to some extent, or he's trying to put a narrative out there and hoping that it will influence her. I don't know if this is what people were talking about when they would label this gaslighting, meaning that it is manipulative. He is stating something as if it's true, hoping that it will brainwash her or something. And yeah, maybe that's the case. I don't know. I don't think it's working though.
Without a question, how do you feel?
I don't know.
Well, obviously you disagree. Who would you say is the best couple?
Interesting. So she says, I don't know. And he's like, how do you feel? She says, I don't know. And he says, well, obviously you disagree, which seemed pretty clear. And then I thought that'd be a good invitation into a relationship where they could clarify their wishes for each other. She has already clarified on camera to him that she is ambivalent about being with him. She says she might want to return to being with Jake, I believe, or was it Randall that she was with? I have to always look at my thing. She was with Randall, right? So she was saying that. I think she's also contemplating being with neither. But it's interesting that he says, who do you think is the best couple? That tells us something, I think, about the way Colby sees the world in terms of superiority and inferiority. You know, just imagine yourself thinking that about your own relationship, like, you know, me and my wife. I don't think I've ever thought in my friend group, my relationship, or where I stand, you know, where my relationship with my wife stands in relation to how good my other friends. Actually, that's funny. I've never even considered that as a question, because one, why would you go down that road? It'd be like saying constantly or thinking frequently about like, am I better looking than among my 10 friends, where do I fit in there? You know, it belies an orientation or a hypervigilance even that he might have.
The best couple.
I think Randall and Shanique. I do think that they might be at a better place than us.
Interesting. So she's saying, I think Randall and Shanique are in a better place than us. They seem like the most solid couple. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I haven't thought about ranking these couples in terms of how strong. I mean, I guess the question would be, if I were to make a bet as to which couple would be the most likely to be satisfied and in a long-term relationship into the future, I wouldn't say Randall and Shanique. I guess it's an interesting thought experiment. So we have Ray and Zay. I think they have an okay chance, given what we've seen. they have had difficulty communicating. They have their issue of Zay dominating conversations and Ray shutting down and them triggering each other in that way. But they also have shown that they can talk about difficult things, like when Ray brought up that Zay had sexual attraction to someone else. They dealt with that, I thought, pretty well. So I think, pretty good chance. We got Jake and April. They're a tough one to gauge because there are times when both of them exhibit differentiation and fairness, and there are times when they both don't. So that's hard to gauge. Shanique and Randall, I would say I would not have them at the top of my list. They might last, I don't know, but we've seen the two of them have, I think, I've hypothesized that they have two modes of talking about tense topics. One is highly conflictual, which we've seen where they're being destructive, and the other mode is to be very closed off and tense and protective and not vulnerable. Now, maybe off camera there are other modes, but that usually says that they're prone to triggering each other and high conflict, and at best they can just be protective, non-expressive, and sort of like managing conflict. It's like they're gripping tight onto the steering wheel and just like hoping they don't go off the cliff. And that's not a way of talking about things in a intimate and constructive way. You have to be kind of relaxed and fluid and honest and vulnerable. And we haven't seen much of that between Shanique and Randall, so I do worry about them. We have Colby and Madeline here. This is a hard one to gauge as well because they have conflict for sure, but the big he's, at least on paper, 100% about her. And the big question is, where is she on the scale with him? Because she has seemingly indicated she is done. But she has sometimes said that and then indicated otherwise, so I don't know. Now, all these couples, I will say, they have potential if they. I'm not saying they're doomed or they're dysfunctional. I'm saying that without help in couples therapy, what is likely to happen? But all of these issues that I am seeing, I think, in these couples are pretty easily fixed, and that's a message I want to put out there, that whatever issues you're facing in your relationship, if you find a competent couples therapist who fits well with you, it is not hard to see improvements, within 3 to 6 months, maybe longer. Sometimes immediately. I've had couples come to me and within 2 or 3 sessions, they're like, I think we're good, and they say we terminate and they never come back. And I'm like, all right, good. 3 sessions, that's great. Sometimes it's like 2 sessions and they come to a 3rd session just to make sure. Anyway, so I want to be clear about that all the problems I've seen on the show are just very, very easily addressed in couples therapy. I have helped couples who have been much more dysfunctional than the couples on this show. Alexis and Hunter, that one's a hard one because we didn't see much of them on the show because they got off the show early. That's a hard one. Now they are about to get married, so maybe that'll help. And then Lauren and Nate, similar situation. It's hard to know. They did seem to be very much in love, and as long as the kid issue was resolved, then I would, at least on the surface, they look like they had the potential to have things be satisfactory and long term. But I definitely would not put them, Colby and Madeline, at the top of the list, and I don't think I'd put Shanique and Randall at the top of the list either. But anyway, so she says that, and if he has a grandiose defense, this will challenge him because he's asserting we are superior to others, and she's saying, no, we're not. Other people are superior to us. And so there's that. I think another possibility, regardless of grandiosity, is that he is, again, wishful thinking, we're the strongest, right? Please say yes. And then she says, no, I do not think we're the strongest couple. I think indirectly saying, I don't know if I want to be with you, and I think that hurts his feelings. So let's see how he deals with the hurt. He just said, oof, let's see how he deals with it.
Girlies, you ready to go outside?
They already went outside. Are you done talking to me now because I said something you didn't like, or what?
No. I just thought the girls need to go outside.
They already went, huh? Weird.
Interesting. So on a dime, he says, let's take the dogs for a walk in the middle of a conversation. And then she says, nope, they've already been on a walk, so they don't need to go again. Are you doing this because you didn't like what I said? And if that's true, which it seems likely, that time when he left the apartment for, I don't know, a number of hours, that shows that I think he has a really hard time with his own vulnerability. And when he starts to feel hurt and distressed, it's really hard for him to deal with that because he doesn't trust that other people will receive that well and hold him. And it feels maybe humiliating to him on a certain level. And so he has to run. And people on the avoidant attachment spectrum, people on the narcissistic personality spectrum and other spectra as well, but those in particular, they do tend to do that. They do, when faced with conflict and vulnerability, they are more likely to want to escape. They're more likely to want to run. The reasons are because early in life, they were forced to learn that they can't depend on other people and that they're better off by themselves, even though they really want to attach. So when in doubt, they tend to isolate or get away from the person that's hurting their feelings. Also, they have a really hard time dealing with vulnerability, and so it's better to just get away than to actually face the vulnerability or the humiliation. Also, they learned early in life that they have to cut off from their emotions and deny them, and when emotions start becoming overwhelmingly noticeable to them, they have to get away from the stimulus in order to cope. They're just like, emotions are happening, get away, get away. And so I don't know if that's what we're seeing right now, but let's see what happens.
I guess I'm just curious to why you feel the way you do.
You're just saying that you think we're in the best place, and I'm saying, like, I kind of feel like we're misunderstanding each other. I'm saying we are misunderstanding each other. You're not this perfect listener now overnight. It's not me being critical. It's me sharing an issue that I feel like we've been having.
All right, so she is saying, I'm not being critical, but I am sharing an issue that we've been having, that you're not a good listener. Okay, so let's see how he receives that feedback from her.
I think you're being an asshole and you're not listening to me at all right now.
How is that the case?
Like, even just now having this conversation with you, I feel like your body language, like I don't know, I feel like you're like, yes, we're so strong, but like I'm not even feeling that with you right now. I'm not feeling it from you.
I don't know what to do then.
Yeah, this is a very weird conversation, and I could see why people would watch this and say, like, that's gaslighting, there's something weird, because it does look manipulative. It does look like he's playing this very weird, dark game right now. I don't think it's, like, insidious, like he's some sort of evil human, but it's weird, because I think she's being genuine, and she's just like, I just don't think we're very strong. I don't think our relationship is going that well. All he'd have to say is like, oh, okay, well, I wish it were going well, or I don't see it that way, or just something other than the way that he's coming across right now. And I don't know what this is. It could be what people think it is on the internet. Well, let's rewatch this because I'm trying to figure out what's happening.
Oh, what are you saying then?
Oh, I guess you...
So I'm not really picking up, but she says, you don't listen well. And then he says, well, what are you saying then? I think he's playing a game, or at least she's interpreting it that way, and is like saying, okay, I'm a good listener. What are you saying? Tell me what you're saying. And then she is like, oh, I think you're playing a game. And she gets a little awkward, and then he mocks her by having a fake laugh. She detects that and then is like, what are you doing? So I didn't show the scene. Well, this is interesting, actually. Let's go down this road. I did show the scene earlier because it seemed like a salacious scene. I don't always react to every scene, particularly when it seems kind of drummed up. They were out with all the other cast. There was a moment where April and Colby kind of had a moment. Colby threw I think a grape, and April caught it in her mouth, and they were bonding over that, and Madeline was rolling her eyes and upset, said something, I think, fairly hostile to Colby under her breath, and Colby handled it pretty well. He was just like, oh, okay, well, you're standing up for yourself. That's hot or something. And she's like, don't give me that crap or something like that. And so hypothesis time, we have no idea, but we use this as a jumping off point for understanding ourselves and other people in our lives. For some people, because of their deep feeling of inferiority, they have a defense of superiority and grandiosity in terms of how they see themselves. And in public, and I've had clients like this for sure, when they are humiliated by their partner, they will, in the moment, because they're around other people, will present like they're cool with it. They're just like, oh, okay. On the inside, they are seething because they were humiliated, they were mistreated, they were rejected, and they go to a pretty dark place because they've been through a lot of rejection throughout their life, and so it's pretty triggering to them. But in the moment, they have enough self-control to, in public, come across like they're actually the reasonable one. And they'll be like, oh, because if you didn't know them and you just saw that interaction, you'd be like, whoa, she was pretty hostile and he was actually pretty cool about it. But the pain and the injury is still there, and their solution, because of the coping style, the defensive structure of narcissism, you cannot tolerate that kind of humiliation because it severely undermines your coping mechanism, which is very fragile, of superiority. And because without that fragile defense mechanism of superiority, and I'm perfect, and my relationships are perfect, and my life is perfect, and everything, my thoughts are perfect, and I'm perfect looking, my emails are perfect, and you will have to fall into the abyss of your inferiority, your nothingness, your emptiness. There are reports that L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology might have suffered from narcissistic personality disorder, and I don't know, and there were reports of him, upon being humiliated in public, that he would lock him and didn't have the ability to uphold his narcissistic defensive structure, would go into a room for 3 days and cry and wail because he would go to that dark place. People with personality disorders often have very black and white thinking because they retain it from an early stage of life. Anyway, so you are humiliated in public. You really want to present to the public that you're the superior one and you're not fazed by it. You're the good guy. So that's what you do. But then you go home and you let your partner have it. And you really lay into them, or you gotta punish them because, one, you're trying to passive aggressively communicate that they hurt you, but you can't say it directly because that's very vulnerable, and it is in line with the fact that you have vulnerabilities which you can't tolerate because it's too scary to recognize that. But you have them deep down. So you're trying to communicate that, but you're also trying to establish superiority over your partner who exhibited seeming superiority over you because they humiliated you. So you have to assert times 100 that, no, you are below me. I am superior to you. Not necessarily because they want to be in power over someone else, but because they're desperate to avoid any implication that they aren't all powerful. Because if they have that thought in their mind, if there's any nuance to their ranking in terms of superiority and inferiority, they fall into the deep end and all they feel is inferior. They're very black and white. If they're not superior, they're deeply inferior. Whereas for people without this personality disorder, we don't even think along those lines. We're like, well, I'm mostly good and I have some self-esteem for sure. I'm good at this, I'm good at that. I'm proud of myself because of that. And unfortunately, I have some flaws that I'm not proud of, but I can accept. And also other people, my partner, other people, they're also pretty good and they have some flaws that I'm not really quite happy about. That's a nuanced gray area of understanding. It's not this all or nothing point of view. Anyway, So you go home and the cameras are there though. So, and maybe your way of asserting your superiority is to gain the upper hand in this weird game playing in an argument. So is that what we're seeing right now? I'm laughing because I think I'm playing right into the internet's hand by, I pray to God that people don't take what I'm saying as I'm diagnosing Colby, because I am not. I hope that everyone understands that. Sometimes I'm terrified that someone is going to post something somewhere and say, Dr. Kirk Honda diagnosed so-and-so with this, which honestly, if you ever see that, refute it. Or if you ever hear me do that, tell me I did it. You know, say, hey, Kirk, I think you just diagnosed someone. That's not okay. It's unethical, because it is. I am a licensed therapist. It's unethical. It's clear in the ethical guidelines that you cannot diagnose from afar. And if you ever see a therapist doing it online, not okay. Now, one could argue that I dip into that realm sometimes, like I am right now. And I always try to be clear that I'm hypothesizing and I never know who these people are. And I'm always saying, we're using this as a jumping off point for learning about ourselves. And many of you are clinicians. So I'm trying to use real life examples of like, well, you know, that's a sign of that. We don't know. It'd be similar as if I saw someone who was crying and seemed to be unmotivated, I'd say, oh, that's a sign of depression. I don't know if it's depression. It's the same thing. It's like, you know, those are signs. We don't know if it's that. I'd need to know much more information. So I hope that I've bored you to death with that caveat and that because I feel like I'm always using a lot of words to say I'm not diagnosing them, but in order to talk about these clinical issues, I think it would be helpful to talk about in relation to what we're seeing. I feel like I want to do that, but I don't want to. Anyway, I hope I'm not. I hope people get that. Anyway, there are other possibilities as to what's happening. He could just be nervous. He's on camera. Maybe he's not playing a game. Let's rewatch that though.
Oh, what are you saying then?
Oh, I guess you. I think you're being an asshole and you're not listening to me at all right now.
How is that the case?
Like, even just now having this conversation with you, I feel like your body language, like I don't know.
So one way to manipulate someone is to give off a subtle, nonverbal communication of hostility. The other person's like, I'm getting a vibe from you. And then you're like, no, I'm not. That's in your head. What's wrong with you? As a way of getting them off kilter, as a way of trying to get over them in superiority, in a superior sense, as a way of getting off the topic, as a way of passive aggressively expressing your hostility to someone, which is probably more likely the case. I don't know if that's what we're seeing, but I think that's kind of what she's getting at.
I feel like you're like, yes, we're so strong, but like I'm not even feeling that with you right now. I'm not feeling it from you.
I don't know what to do then. Is that because you saw Randall today?
What?
She was being honest and I think fair by saying, you think our relationship is so strong. I don't feel like it's that way. I think what would have been more healthy or more owning her own feelings would be something like, because I have ambivalence about you that I've talked about before. So yeah, I don't think we're very strong. But instead she said, I don't feel it from you. I don't feel like you love me that much, I think is what she's saying. So I don't know what's going on here. And then he says, I don't know what to do with that, which kind of makes sense because now I don't know their day to day. Maybe he's very cold or who knows. But then he says, is all this because you and Randall talked today? Who knows what's happening? But if we go down the narcissism road, it's possible that he saw her and him talking. It was, at the very least, hurtful to him and, you know, provoked some jealousy, which I think is quite common among the cast members, everyone. But if it were in the narcissistic hypothesis, then it was humiliating to him. It's like everyone can see that my woman is talking to someone else, and that is making me look inferior and lesser than. I'm a beta. I'm a simp. All those just ridiculous misogynistic words. I mean, I can't. Anyway, so, you know, who knows if he's going there. And then it's sort of, you know, in his mind, and then he brings it up now as a way of humiliating her. You know, in a charitable, giving him the benefit of the doubt, he is, if we just get away from personality disorders, he knows that she is ambivalent about him, and that scares him because he wants to be with her. And so in this moment, he's saying, is it, and he's trying to look for some kind of answer. It's like, do you love Randall? Maybe this is, you know, it'd be normal for him to say, because she has said very clearly to him a number of times, Randall ticks all the boxes. And there was only a couple issues with him. Like, he is the perfect man for her. She has said that, essentially, to multiple people. So it makes sense that when she exhibits and expresses that she's unsure about the relationship, that he would be like, do you want to be with Randall and not me?
We're not the strongest couple.
All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.